Hello and welcome. My name is Cliona Foley and this is Off the Ball. It's a podcast about women in sport which we hope will educate and entertain sports fans of all genders and ages. If you're looking for our previous episodes, you'll get them on iTunes or on offtheball.com on their podcast section. Just go in, scroll down their podcast list and you'll find Off the Bench there and all our previous episodes. We also have a Twitter account. It's at Off the Bench OTB, capital OTB. So if you have any ideas or suggestions or feedback you'd like to give us, you can get us there. When we set this podcast up originally, the idea was to tell women's stories that we don't normally see in the media about sport, and also to capture some of the history of Irish women's sport that is very, very often lost because it doesn't get a lot of coverage. So for this reason, we are really excited today to have somebody in our studio who is the epitome of inspiring, legendary, all those words you hear about Irish women's sport, and that is Rosemary Smith. Welcome to Off the Bench.
Thank you.
Also today, we have another rally driver of the next generation, if you like, and the current generation. And again, we hear so little about modern women driving in motorsport. So Patricia Denning is with us. Patricia, welcome to Off the Bench.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
It's great to have you here. Obviously, Rosemary disappeared very recently, and it is your autobiography. And there are some incredible stories in it. But I wondered, did you find it hard to do, or what was your approach to it?
No, I didn't find it hard to do because I only had to talk and tell. And this lovely lady, Anne Ingalls, she did the actual, she listened to me for hours on end. We used to do it in the RIAC in Dawson Street. They were very kind. They were, they let us come in there every week.
Right.
And then she had to type it all up, and at times, she even asked me when I got married, and I told her 1 year, and she came back, she said, no, it wasn't, you're wrong. So that's as much as I was
is very important.
No, she was brilliant, I must say.
And had anybody ever approached you before about writing your autobiography?
I thought about it a number of years ago when I sort of gave up the professional stuff. Now, I do a lot with the classics and historics. I did a rally 3 weeks ago in Bath, in a lovely, you'll understand this, it was Roger Clark's 1979. It was the rally winning car, it was an Escort, and a man bought it. But the difficulty was just before we started to go out and getting it into gear, and it was great, and everybody was around the place. And he said, actually, no, I don't own this car any longer. Oh. He said, I just sold it yesterday for £200,000.
Oh. No pressure.
No pressure. I said, what happens if I write it off? He said, I don't think you will. Yeah, but I said, I do not have £200,000 if I do write it off. So
that's what insurance is for, don't worry about it. But this notion then, you're saying, when you gave up professionally, you do historic drives and you get invites to do things.
All over the world.
But the idea of writing the book then, it hadn't really. And what's Paul Howard, the guy who people will know from a lot of different things, he has a connection here to producing this book in some ways.
He wrote a book about Tara Brown, who was one of the Guinness family. Yeah. But I had raced against Tara Brown years ago. So he got in touch with me for me to tell him what I knew about Tara. And then I said, I'm really thinking now I might, do the book.
Put it together.
Yeah. And he said, I said, would you be interested in doing it? And he said, I'd love to do it, but, and I knew when the but was coming, but he said, he's doing so many things. Yeah. He was starting to do another, one of the books, Russell Carroll Kelly, and then he was doing the musical thing for the Gaiety. And, but he said, I know somebody more of your own age, which would be probably a help.
Yeah.
And this was Anne. And, I warned him, I said, when I meet Anne first, if I don't click with her and she doesn't click with me, we're not going any further.
I often think that's interesting. You need to get on with somebody to write a book with them. Yeah. But so you clicked.
She was absolutely great, and any of the stuff I couldn't remember, she would Google it and she'd look it up and everything else. But then the thing was, I really wanted with a lot more photographs in it. But they said, well, there are too many stories, so if you start putting all those photographs, it'll end up about,
for me, I would love to see even more photographs because they must be incredible. And even the cartoons of some of your races and some of your achievements are amazing. But we'll talk about the book later. It is a really great read. And I have to say, it captures so much of Irish motorsport history and your achievements. That's what I think is brilliant, because that's what we want to do here, is to keep these stories and make sure that, people acknowledge them. Patricia, would you have been conscious of, you're now racing and you race in rallycross, which is slightly different, we'll talk about it in a minute, but would you have been conscious of Rosemary?
Oh yes, most definitely. how could you not be? I would have followed your career, and it was 2 years ago that you drove the Formula One car.
Yes,
I thought that was just an amazing feat.
It was amazing.
I say you did. Yeah. I would have known of Rosemary and, your little Hillman Imp and the Monte Carlo rally.
Yeah. And I grew up, I was telling Rosemary that I grew up when you didn't see women in sports pages, very, very few women in any sport. Maybe when the Olympics came around, you'd see some track and field. But Rosemary Smith was somebody who was regularly on the sports pages, and I grew up watching it and just amazed by what you could do and what you could achieve. And you seem to get recognition that, as I said, women in other sports didn't, because what you were doing was so extraordinary. So we'll talk about that. There's a new initiative in Ireland to get more coverage for women in sport. It's called 20 by 20.
Yeah.
And one of the key words, and it's a Billie Jean King's phrase, is if you can't see it, you can't be it. But in fact, it seems to me, Rosemary, that you broke that mold, because were you seeing women as drivers or rally drivers? So if you were, who were they?
You see, the silly thing was, people say, back then there were very few women rally drivers. But that's not true.
Yeah.
One of the first rallies I did, there were 12 women's teams.
12 women's teams?
Teams.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And people like Pat Moss and Evie Rosquist and all these people, they were all different nationalities, and we all competed against each other. But I just want to emphasise this. We didn't go out to win the coup de dame, the ladies' prize.
The ladies' part of it.
We went out to be as high up overall as we possibly could. And that's what I certainly, and you proved this recently, because you became the first woman ever to be a rallycross champion.
Yeah,
beating all the men. I was thrilled to hear it.
Yeah, very much.
Fantastic.
Last month I won the super final in Galway in rallycross, so I beat all the men on that day. That's the first time it's ever been done in Ireland or Europe.
Well, I was looking it up to see, and in fact, as you said, they're trying to check to see has it been done anywhere. Explain the difference. Rosemary drove rally a lot of the time. She was driving rally, which was long distance on the roads. You do something slightly different. Explain to us what the difference is.
I do the national championship for rallycross, and it's run on a track, but some of the track is tarmac and some of the track is loose, so that's where the challenge is.
Yeah.
So you start off the day and you have 3 heats or 3 races, and then that gives you your qualifying position for your final. And then at the end of the day, there's lots of different classes with different CCs.
Different size of car, yeah.
And what they do then is the 8 fastest cars for the day go into a super final.
So all the class winners go up against one another.
All up against one another.
Yeah, and you won that in Galway last month. And it was the first time a woman had ever done it. Yeah. And so... come back to the thing then of there were women there. Were there women in Ireland, Rosemary?
No.
In the 60s?
No.
So you were the first, really?
No, I don't think I was the first, but I was the only one that...
Be competitive.
Yeah, and to sort of take it seriously, even though when I started it was just a hobby and a sport. But I wanted to win. I went out to win. But I did a lot of rallycross, and I did a lot of forestry, and go-karts and single-seaters and ordinary racing. We went right through the whole spectrum. Yeah, because all this stuff you're doing on gravel, it'll stand you in very good stead. Because if you get going then and you're going to go out to do Monte Carlo or the Swedish International or anything like that, she has this thing of being able to control the car on ice and snow and the mud
really
and things are very similar, so you have... So.
And Patricia, you were telling us you actually race, you also race forestry rallying as well. So
that's right,
which you did as well.
That's Rosemary did.
So come back to my question is, how do you in the 60s and you now end up rallying? Because it's not taught in schools. There are no lessons to go to get it. Was it through your families? Do you think that's what influenced you initially, Rosemary?
No, I was a dress designer, and and one of the women who came into me, she went rallying, and then somebody let her down one day, and she said, "You come to," just like that. She didn't talk with you; she talked at you.
Oh, right.
And I'm sure your father probably knew her many years ago.
Did.
And so I went with her, but I didn't realise I was meant to navigate.
Yes, I love this story.
I just can't navigate.
Listeners, Rosemary can't navigate. This is such a brilliant thing. She can't navigate. And when you started, she drove and she put you in to navigate. And a mile down the road, you said, "I can't navigate." And you switched places. And you used to do that all the time then.
Well, for the first few events. And then she realised that actually I was a faster driver than she was. So, no,
but your family, your dad had a garage. I mean, were you around cars? I mean,
Well, around cars in as much that my unfortunate mother, if there was an old banger of a car in the garage, mother was given that car, and then suddenly, if somebody wanted to buy it,
it was for sale.
It was for sale, and there wasn't a car.
Right.
But
I mean, what age were you when you learned to drive?
13.
13. I mean, you see, that is relatively
And again,
young.
I was the same.
Yeah, I learned to drive on grass.
Yeah.
And my father kept saying, go faster, because you won't get the feel of it slipping and sliding.
Yeah.
So it was
the faster
really,
you go. So, do your family have a motor
my family are involved in the motor trade. My father set up a panel crash repair business in 1965. So when we were growing up, there was always cars around the place.
In Rathfarnham?
In Rathfarnham. And when we were young, my father made us a homemade cart with a Honda 50 engine. And we went up and down and back around the backyard. And the joke was that there was never any petrol around the place for lawnmowers. Myself and my brother had a hose pipe, and we siphoned the petrol out of everything. And like even visitors to the house or whoever, our relations, they didn't escape it. We relieved them of a few gallons of petrol. We went up and down, and.
So you loved it from the start?
So I loved it from the start, and my father raced in the 60s as well, but he did midget car racing.
Yes.
So he would have done that all around Dublin and Wicklow and Wexford in the 60s and 70s. And then I have 4 siblings, so when we all arrived, then obviously he had to give that up because he was busy with his children, but he would have raced when he was very young as well.
And did you see, I mean, you were probably following your dad, did you see other women in motor racing?
No, the only person I would have known was Rosemary.
Isn't that amazing, Rosemary? I mean, that's, when you read the book, you play that down. I don't think you understand your significance in some ways, that you were the only one. When we talk about people being inspirations,
leader.
But you actually broke so many molds that you were, and interesting, the foreword to the book is actually by
Eddie Jordan.
And he speaks about how you inspired a whole generation of drivers, not women, men and women. Do you know what I mean? Because you were out there doing this incredible thing on the international
I didn't realise it at all.
Yeah, you don't.
No, I never did. I mean, even now I say it's quite funny if I go somewhere, even yesterday, people say, oh, I remember you, and my dad did this, and, unfortunately it's getting to the stage now, my grandfather knew you well. But no, it's just, I was hesitant even to do the book.
Were you?
Yeah, very hesitant. But anyway, having met Anne, and she was just so nice, and she just did everything, and she just sat there. She's an English woman, and she's lived in Ireland all her life, but she's never driven a car.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Isn't that interesting?
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're too modest, Rosemary.
Yeah, isn't she? Well, there's a line in the book where you say rally driving is not for the sentimental. It's a tough sport.
Is, yeah.
And you clearly both know it's tough. But I wondered, when did you know first that you were good at it, Rosemary? And then last Patricia as well.
Well,
when did you know?
Now, that's a hard question. I don't know. But, when I had, other people gave me cars, put it that way, so they must have had some idea that, I was safe anyway. But it was, they didn't want their cars, mashed up, except I did with Delphine, unfortunately, one night. But that was, her husband was, he came down afterwards and he rebuilt the car and said, go on, take it out again.
It's a pretty spectacular crash,
Yeah, it was.
But you knew, so what you're thinking is, you knew you were good because people were giving you cars and encouraging you to keep going almost. Was that it?
Yeah, but then on the other hand, I had people saying, what are you trying to prove?
I know.
You're stupid. You're because I used to model as well at that stage. And it was always, this sort of, and that's in there, this dumb blonde, and, if she doesn't win, at least we'll get photographs. And, it was difficult enough in that.
When was what was the worst of that you experienced, do you think?
Oh, from the beginning. It was, if I did win something, they'd say things like, oh, did everybody else fall out? Or, oh, you must have had the fastest car. And, I mean, nowadays, obviously, the way that the younger women are dealing with things, they wouldn't put up with it.
No.
But I just wasn't made that I sort of fought my own corner. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And, I just really took whatever. And then when I got the works drive, and that was after I did the first Monte Carlo rally, then I thought, maybe, it's getting better now. You know,
it's an English company, and obviously then basically you're driving for them, and so they're giving you the car, they're giving you all that technical background.
Yeah,
so that was a big breakthrough for you.
It
was a company called Roots, was it?
It was the Roots. It was an English company. It was a family company, and they're out of existence now. But I still have one of the little cars, one of the imps.
One of the imps. Your famous imp.
Yeah, I have the... the
fantastic.
EDU 710C, I still have that. It's the only one, but they were too slow, Patricia. They were too slow.
You just wanted a faster car.
Yes, I did, all the time. And when I got faster cars, I did really well in them.
Patricia, explain what you drive, and then Rosemary will tell us how she feels about the chance to drive something like you drive.
I have a Mitsubishi Lancer 9. It's 300 brake horsepower, but to give you an idea of what that is to somebody who's not that educated, your average road car like a Fiesta or a Ford Focus is probably 110, 120 brake horsepower. So it's quick, it's four-wheel drive, and it's turbocharged as well, which would make it very, very fast.
So that is incredibly powerful. And Rosemary, you would never had a chance when you were rallying initially to drive anything like that?
No.
Nothing that powerful?
No, they weren't out at that stage.
Yeah.
I mean, the Escorts, well, the Mini Coopers were the ones that really knocked us out, because we were 998cc. Can you imagine? It was
1,000cc,
Not even 1,000. It was up to 1,000cc. But then the Mini Coopers, of course, they won everything. And then after that was the Escorts. And then, all the major companies were coming in, vying with each other, because it was all to do with selling cars.
Yes.
And either you won or, you took a dolly bird who could sit there and cut out the long blonde hair and the eyelashes put on.
But you say that, you see, I find this really interesting. You say that about, the image that you had, and there's a line in this, I said, where you say, I think... You kind of say, I think, there was an element of me getting some of my work. I was beating men in 1960s when women were often considered arm candy in motorsports. But I wasn't stupid enough to think I got the drive on my ability alone. I was the blonde dolly bird who grabbed headlines for the motor industry, and some men resented my success. My confidence was continually undermined. But, I mean, when you did things that like you did you not get such confidence that you didn't feel that? You still felt you weren't as good at them? Did you?
I don't know what I felt, to be honest. You see, I grew up in a time that children were seen and not heard. And that was it. And you don't, speak to your elders and, as they say, betters. And you don't do this and you don't do that. I wish some of the parents nowadays would take that. But I never really had... I really didn't have the confidence, even having won a lot of stuff. And going and travelling out to Australia, New Zealand, and racing in Sebring and Daytona in the States.
Yeah, you went everywhere.
Everywhere,
South America.
Yeah.
Incredible. 1965, this famous Tulip Rally, 180 cars started and 45 finished, and you won it.
Great achievement.
Surely then you realised I fit in here. I have every right to be here and compete with these men.
Well, it was really a case of, you had a car that would go up the mountains in the snow and ice, because it was rear-wheel drive, and one thing and the engine was in the back of it, so you had more,
traction.
Much more traction. Because some of the bigger cars, like the Tigers were coming, Sunbeam Tigers were coming out at that stage. And there was just, they just couldn't get up.
But was the inference your car was best suited to those things?
Exactly.
But you still had to be able to drive it up the hills and around the corners in the ice and the snow, and that's where the skill is involved.
Well, not even that, Patricia, but tell the listeners what you did to the co-driver. I think it was in the Tulip Rally. Was that the one where your co-driver had to go and sit on the bonnet at one point to keep you on the ice?
No, on the bonnet, because the engine was in the rear. And we got, really stuck, and I was bouncing. See, you sort of bounce along and try and get it. And then I said, Val, this isn't going to work. Val was a lovely English girl, Val Domleo, and she was really good co-driver. And you see, the driver dictates to the co-driver. I don't know how you and your fiancé get on. Does he resent it at all?
No, he loves it.
He's the co-driver.
He's the co-driver. But anyway, this girl and I said, we're not going to get up here unless you get out and you sit on the boot lid and bounce. And she did.
In the freezing cold?
Freezing cold, the snow coming down.
For how long?
Oh, for miles, well, kilometres. You know, I mean, it's just because it was April, May time, and the Tulip Rally was meant to be all sort of in Holland, if you like. But they went up into the Alps, up into France. And of course, the snow came down, and it was very late snow. But then it froze at night, and of course this was at night.
And this is. But what amazed me was that story was like, you won this rally. Okay, you had a car that was suitable conditions, but you won it also because you and your co-driver were willing to do something like that. Get out, sit on the bike, do it. Like, there's a phenomenal competitive spirit there, Rosemary.
Yeah, but
unbelievably competitive.
I have to finish, because a man told me many years ago, he said, if you don't finish, you'll never win. And the other thing he said to me, which was very good advice, just to ordinary young drivers on the road, have the courage to go slowly to begin. Because a lot of young drivers, and in rallies, of course, the first thing you get in, and you know, and away you go. And then when you get to the first corner, and you practically slither off, or whatever. And that came back with Cecil Vard, and it came back, and I always remember thinking, in the beginning, I thought, what's this old fella talking about? And then after a few near misses, and I said, you know, I understand.
But you see, there was obviously great thinking there. Have you ever had to do anything that dramatic? I mean, it's a different kind of racing that you do.
I've had a few small crashes. It's very handy to have my brothers at home with a crash repair business. I had probably a couple of years ago, I was down testing in Mondello the day before Rallycross. And sometimes the day before you'd go down, you'd be trying different tyres or different tyre pressures. And I was putting a few laps in, and I clipped a tyre barrier, and I rolled. And I remember when it was rolling, I was thinking, that's very unfortunate now, because I won't be able to race tomorrow. But the car stopped upside down. I was saying, God, it's really clean underneath. So anyway, I had to get out of the car, and it's difficult to get out of the car when you're upside down. And you think, all right, so I got out, and the ambulance was there. And when I took off my helmet, they were amazed that it was a woman. So I had to go to the medical centre and get checked out. Anyway, I got into the Jeep then, put the car in the trailer, and I rang my brothers, and I said, I had a little tip, and I said, could I meet you in the garage? And they said, yeah, no problem. So fair play to my brothers, out with the tools on a Saturday afternoon, burning the midnight oil, and we had it back on the trailer and back in Mondello for the next day.
Ready to compete the next day.
And it didn't bother me at all. And the people were saying, are you nervous? I was saying, no. It's fine.
If you're too nervous anyway, you shouldn't be doing it. An awful lot of people always used to say that. Are you nervous? Are you nervous? You know? But if you are, I mean, you are apprehensive. You know, you definitely are, especially if it's a long event.
But you're not afraid of speed, obviously, or you're not afraid of manoeuvring car. I mean, you can't have that in your mind.
No.
Interesting enough, Patricia, you were an equestrian, and you used to ride horses. And you said that's you had an injury from riding horses, and then you went to drive cars afterwards.
I did a bit of motorsport in my late 20s, and then I went back as a hobby riding horses, and I was learning to play polo, and I fell off and broke 2 bones in my back, and was laid up for 6 months. And then I decided that I'd go back to motorsport because it was safer than horses.
Well, there you go. She could have been
much safer.
It's much safer because you've got all the roll cages and the sidebars and everything.
You're not dealing with the horse's moods, or
a horse is an animal, and you know, they can get spooked, or the wind, or a plastic bag.
I used to.
And you rode horses in the RDS. There you go. So you're competitive people.
In a lot of ways, the trouble was I was in the pony class. And, you know, ponies, they're that much smaller, and I think they're more, you know, I don't like this one.
They can take fright very easily.
And even the one that I fell off the very top fence in the RDS, and he stood there. I jumped the jump. I went over, but he didn't. He stopped. And then he came around. Lorelei, Laura's remember, little Don pony from Donegal, and he came around and he looked at me and then went, hey, and then he trotted off back down right into the.
But I think it's really interesting. Listeners probably don't even know. Like, Rosemary played golf off 12. She rode horses. You were
hockey, tennis, anything you can think of.
When she went to designer college in Dublin and Grafton Academy, she won best student. So there's an innate competitiveness there that obviously you know, and it's really interesting that your book has the title is Driven. You know, because it's not just about what you were doing; it's about a mentality. And Patricia, do you have to have that as well? Do you think in motorsport, or do you have to have more of it because you're a woman and you might be a minority?
I think I'm like in rallycross. I'm the only woman who does rallycross in Ireland at the moment, but my competitors don't treat me any differently. I don't want to be treated any differently. You know, do they take me seriously? I think sometimes initially, if people didn't know me, they would kind of have an attitude, Ash, you're great to give it a go.
Yeah.
Then as soon as my helmet comes on and my gloves are on, then it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. And I do my best to beat as many of them as possible. And sometimes then, you know, when the guys beat each other, they might, you know, there's always competitiveness. But I think that some of them probably get slagged off a bit for being beaten by a woman.
Yes, there could be that element.
I'd say so, absolutely.
Do you have to have money to get involved in motorsport? Tell us a little bit, Rosemary, about, like, could you make a living at the time, or was it a hobby? I was curious about that.
No, it was only a hobby initially, because I had this little boutique place where I was trying to make money, making wedding dresses and all this sort of carry on. But anyway, but then when I started going rallying, you know, we got some sponsorship. But the thing about sponsorship, the sponsors want to see somebody who's winning, or else that you're sort of a dolly bird. So at least they get something out of it. But nowadays, I think it's different. You have to prove, before you get a sponsor, that you are able to win, which you've done, Patricia, which is, you know, great, because you need money, you need a lot of money. But as I say in the beginning, I had other people's cars to drive. But
and then you were a works driver, and then you got invitations to do lots of other stuff. So that
and it was all sort of things like come out to Australia and come out to somewhere else. But they paid for everything. I mean, I could not have done. Yeah, well, you have a few more outright wins, and you will.
I was asking you, like, what did you win? What did you get for winning something? You were saying even one of the huge rallies across the world, you got 1,000 between three of you in the car.
17,000 miles. The London to Mexico was, and we won. I don't know where overall, but 10th overall or something, and we won the women's award. And we got all of £1,000 split between three of us,
and go very far.
We were told that. You go down, because there was a big, whoever he was, you know, the mayor.
Local dignitary,
they were coming along, and we'd have to have something nice on, three women, you know, having driven 17,000 miles.
Of course, I had a little dress in the boot.
Exactly. So we went down to one of these, it was, you know, it was like a shop that the government ran. So that that we wouldn't get ripped off by some, you know, as they would. And we bought the dresses, and they were lovely. I always remember it was white lace, handmade lace. We all had sort of similar but different. Because one of the little girls with me, Alice, she was about a size 8, I'd say.
Right,
no more. Split Scottish girl. And then the other girl, Jeanette Roland, she was about a size 10, and then I was about size 10, but I was
tall.
This height, and they were both small. But we bought these gorgeous dresses, and that's about all.
That's all you could do with the money. Yeah,
well,
exactly. That's all.
Because it wasn't really.
And
in other places, like in Nairobi, where we did the safari rally, we won. I think at that stage it was about £1,000. Well, it would have been the equivalent. But you couldn't take money out of.
You couldn't
stage.
No, the money there.
And so that's maybe somewhere over there still.
In terms for you, how do you fund it? Because again. And we're really lucky to have Patricia here today, because tell the listeners what you do for a living.
I'm a Christmas tree grower.
Exactly. So this is her busiest time of year. And you're a Christmas tree grower out in Wicklow?
We have trees down in Wexford and Tipperary.
Wow. So this is massively busy.
Big.
So my question is, could you make any money from the motorsport end of it?
Motorsport for me is a hobby. You know, there's very, very few people. I think there's probably Craig Breen. I think he's probably the only person in Ireland who's making a living out of motorsport. Right, So anybody you see doing motorsport, it's a hobby. Some people have more sponsors than others. I actually funded myself, but I am, as I said, very lucky to have my family that they
can help.
Exactly. You've got repairs, you've got all that kind of stuff.
Do they sort of go out and you know, be your support group on the events?
Not really. They do crash repairs, and that's what they specialise in. So But
if you crash in the middle of your forest down in somewhere,
then I'm out. But
But you don't have a service crew with you?
No, I do have a service crew. I have a service crew, Paddy MacDonald, who is... I couldn't do it without Paddy MacDonald, to be honest. He is my mechanic. He prepares the car, the tyres.
And so is Paddy doing that voluntarily as well?
No,
it's a hobby for him. Are you paying him?
Paddy's paid.
So you need to fund it yourself. Then.
Yeah. So I have a service crew. So it's very much a team effort between the three of us, myself, Paddy, and Joe. And Paddy would be very supportive of me. And
Joe's your partner, and he is your
he's my co-driver as well.
As well. We were just looking, just for the viewers.
That works very well.
There's a booklet, and it looks like hieroglyphics, but that's actually the notes that the co-drivers read out. And to me, it's hieroglyphics, but it all makes sense. And he's calling, left, right, and the degrees of corners and everything. So that is what a co-driver's book looks like. I was wondering, for both of you, if you were men, do you think it would make any difference to what you've done in motorsport? Would it have made it easier? Would it be exactly the same? For you, does gender play any part in it? Patricia?
I've never received any negative reactions to driving. Sometimes, as I said, people say, oh, you're great to give it a go, and you get a little bit of that sometimes, but then people know you and they know your ability, and they know that once you put the helmet on and your gloves on and your belts are tight, really gender doesn't really come into it. But as I said, some of them probably get a little bit of slagging if they get beaten.
Rosemary, what about you? Well, do you think it would have been different if you were a man?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have got the works drive.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
You think it was an advantage for you to be a woman?
Yeah, in this, in that particular situation, because the Roots cars, and they had three good drivers at that stage. They had Peter Hopper, Paddy Hopkirk, and Peter Job, I think it was. Anyway, doesn't matter. But they were getting to the stage the cars just weren't winning. They weren't fast enough. And this when the rapiers were around. And then, I think the manager was very clever. We didn't actually get on because I thought of him as a slimy middle-aged git. Anyway, no, I didn't like him. But I mean, so much so I didn't like him. When he came along and he offered me a drive, and I said, no, thank you. And that was after the Monte Carlo rally, because I got a lot of publicity, even though we didn't win anything.
Course,
So is your thinking was that they took you on as a driver to get publicity?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yeah.
But
I was the Irish, what do they call me? Model farmer, because we had a farm. We lived on a farm.
It's an unusual combination, model farmer.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at your achievements, I mean, they disprove that so much. I don't know how many, 6 or 8 Monte Carlo rallies. That 1965 Tulip Rally, famously at 3,000 miles, and you won it. Sydney, London, 10,000 miles. Only 98 cars, only 23 finished, and you were 10th overall. That's extraordinary. 1966 at the RAC Rally, 150 entries, 50 cars finished, and you were 14th. I mean, this is the sort of thing that proves just how good a driver you were, but also how... Tell me about the Donegal Rally and Pauline Gullick, because if anybody has seen the Rosemary got a chance in 2017 to drive a Formula 1 car, and it's on YouTube. It's a beautiful, beautiful video. But Pauline Gullick is there with you, and she was a co-driver. And when I read in the book what you did to her in the Donegal Rally, I thought, how are they still talking? So tell the listeners what you did to her in that Donegal Rally.
She is brilliant. No. We had this, it was a Lotus Sunbeam, and it was a lovely car. And we were doing very well in Donegal. I think we were about 4th or 5th overall at that stage. And the throttle cable was sort of it was catching through the bulkhead. Yeah. And when we got into the service thing, I said to one of the mechanics, he was sort of managing mechanic, whatever. And I said, it's actually snagging going through it. And I could see he sort of goes... women drivers. And
which was often said to you.
Yes, often. But came and he went, boom, 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 you see, under the bonnet, and this is it. Yeah. And he said, fixed now, grand. So off we went on the next special stage. And because Donegal roads are very narrow and are yumpy, as we say, yumpy, yumps. But, and it was catching still. And I said it to Paul, I said, it's still catching. And with that bang, it broke. And we were left. And I said, what are we going to do now? I said, I know what we do. Pauline, open the bonnet. Well, I opened the bonnet. She got out, and she sat on the wing of the car. Yeah. And she leant over in the engine and pressed the throttle down.
So you put her on the bonnet of the car,
Again.
holding the accelerator down,
You have a habit of that.
holding the throttle. Yeah, I know. She has a habit of throwing people out the thing.
Onto the bonnet.
That's
Yeah.
how you kept going.
Well, the bonnet was up like that, and I had between the steering wheel and the, underneath
Oh,
of the
that little
bonnet,
gap.
I was like this, sort of driving, trying to see what was coming next, which was a bit difficult. But anyway, we just hit one bump. But we must have been doing about 60 at least at this stage, which was obviously too fast when you couldn't see where you were going, and you know, this poor girl hanging on for grim death.
But the amazing thing is, not only did you succeed then, but you've always been great friends, and she was there. She was with you when you drove the Formula One car.
Well, I didn't know she was even coming out because another girl came out with me from here, from Dublin, and we went. It was all very rushed, the whole thing, and during one of the afternoons we were sitting there, and some of the people from the Renault team were sitting around with us, and one guy in particular, he was sort of going, and he was sort of hopping up and down, and I thought, God, he's totally bored with this whole thing. But in fact, Pauline was staying at that hotel, and we were staying at another hotel. And he didn't want Pauline to arrive, that I would see her then. So they wanted to keep her. Not until I got into the Formula One. And just, you know, I was sort of just about getting into the car, and around the pit area and into the garage came Pauline. And then she started to cry. And then I said, I might never see you again. Oh, thanks, and bundle. But she was there.
So you're still great friends, isn't that?
Oh, yeah,
it's such a lovely thing to have her there for that. Yeah,
but she's, I mean, anything she's doing, I go and I met her in 73, and we're still great friends.
That's great.
She was here for the launch of the book, and she was here for a birthday party, because I used to have the birthday party last year in the mansion. No, it wasn't. It wasn't in the mansion house, but Larry Mooney and a lot of the old lads, they decided, because I was in hospital, I have heart stents, I have 6 heart stents, so they just keep popping another one in. I said, look, would you do just a string and put them all the way around so I don't have to go in again. So Larry Mooney decided this year, because we didn't have the party last year, that he would have it. So he had it. He knew somebody who knew the new Lord Mayor, who's an absolute darling. If you get a chance to meet him, go and meet him. He is lovely. Niall Ring. Right. And anyway, so
this was the 80th, or had it moved into the 81st by the time they had it?
81st,
yeah, the 81st.
Yeah.
It's incredible, Rosemary. Your energy is just ridiculous for
an 82 year.
Yeah, because
what would I do if I didn't?
Well, tell people. I love the story of why you wore false eyelashes when you were driving.
Well, they were, you know, if you drive day, night. Have you ever done a very long distance, like 2 days and 2 nights on the trot?
I've done the Cork 2-day forestry this year I did it, yeah.
And does that run through the night?
No, it doesn't run through the night.
The ones that run through the night.
All right. So I used to stick on these long false eyelashes.
Gorgeous, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they're gorgeous, but they're very useful, because when I was really started to get tired, and I'd see them coming down sort of over my eyes, and I'd say, time to wake up.
So I don't think anybody ever realised how useful for a rally driver false eyelashes could be brilliant. They used to let you know when you were starting to fall asleep. Very dangerous thing to do.
The other thing is, with my nails, you see, everybody thought my nails were stuck on. No, they grow there, and they grow so quickly. It's incredible. But you know, I always wanted them to look nice, because when I took off my driving gloves, I liked it. Nice. And before we went into the final control, I'd, you know, put in, if we timed this, and I'd do the hair and put on a little hat or a cap or something, and, you know, powder the old face.
And get everything sorted for you.
Well, if I was known as a dolly bird, I was damn well going to be a dolly bird.
You were
and then I'd go and beat them as well, so I didn't care. There's what I looked like. Oh, you can't see that. That was in America.
Fabulous.
Yeah. Gorgeous,
It's just amazing to, as I said, to read about your achievements. I cannot recommend this book any more than I have. This book is just brilliant, because, as I said, you know, you broke the mould, but also the way you broke it, I think, and just your attitude to life still hasn't changed in one little bit. When your mum died, you had some ideas about what you want to do whenever, and it will be a very long time, and so you have actually picked your coffin out.
Oh yeah.
So tell the listeners about it.
Yeah, but you see, I don't have an another, you know. I've no brothers, no sisters, they're dead, unfortunately. So I decided, and my best friend that I dedicated that book to, unfortunately she died. It was dedicated to her, so it should have been, you know, Pat my best friend for years, and I have RIP after it. But the book was already printed when Pat died. Right. But anyway, what did you ask me?
I was asking about the coffin. You were at it. You went to an undertaker, so you decided you were going to be proactive about this, as you are in everything in life.
We went out, and I said, I used to go out to Adam Faith years ago, and when I saw he had died, he had a wickerwork coffin.
Yeah.
So I said, that's what I'm having. I like that, but I want it painted either very pale pink or white or something like that. So I went out to this place out in Shankill, beautiful place and very sombre, and everything was very sombre. And this very nice gentleman came out in a suit and, very serious face. And I said, I want to order, I want to know about it, and so on. So he said yes, and yes, we could do that. And I wanted pale pink, same as our coats.
Yeah.
And, I had it all worked out. And he said, well, when do you think you might need it?
Well, I don't actually know that.
I said, I don't know that. I said, no. And he said, who's it for? That's for me. But he didn't even smile then. I thought he might at least do something. No.
That sense of humour, I reckon, had got you through many a sticky moment in what was an incredibly tough career. And also you have said you want nobody at your funeral to wear black, which I love.
No, I think that's a great idea.
I want, and my last song as I go up through the curtains, and it's going to have all pinks and lilac, all colours, all flowers, very pale, lovely colours. And then I'm going to have a big cardboard hand on the top of the coffin, which is going to come up like this, and and the song I'm going to have is Bocelli and Sarah Brightman, and they're going to be singing "It's Time to Say Goodbye." And then if anybody even sheds one tear, they're not going to the party afterwards.
Good. And there will be a party afterwards. I can guarantee there'll be some party.
I'll leave all that. The solicitor has it, even the poor solicitor, when I told him what I wanted and so on, and he was, is this woman mad or something?
No, that's a great attitude to have in life. Patricia, just because you're of the next generation, are there many women in rallying now? As you said, you're the only one in your class, are you? Or the only one?
In rallying now, there's in the Forestry Championship, which I did this year, there's 4 women in it.
Right.
They're all 4 great ladies
Who
of
else
all
is there?
different. There's Aoife Gann, there's Jenna McCann, and there's Gemma Curley.
Right.
And they're all great girls. But there's a couple of female navigators as well.
Yeah, I believe.
And that's the thing about motorsport. We always say that in this podcast. You don't have to be an athlete. You can be a coach. You can be an administrator. You can be a marshal. You can be a co-driver. There's loads of options in motorsport for women to get involved in.
There's the women. There's lots of women involved in different areas of it.
Absolutely.
Women tend to also be really, in some situations, in some big events, they do a lot of the work in the background. They do the entries. They do
sing it.
Do a lot of the paperwork in the background.
Well, it's Breege Brophy. Did you ever meet Breege?
No.
Breege is she's from Galway. Her husband died actually.
Yes, Brian Brophy.
Yes. But Breege was the first clerk of the course for any international rally. Right. She was the clerk of the course, which meant that whatever happened, she had the final say in it, but she was very good.
You mean clerk in Ireland for the international rally here, right? So there you go. So women can.
But there are a lot of women, and there are women who go out and they marshal. In the middle of the night. Do they do any in the middle of the night any longer?
Not really anymore.
Yeah, the health and safety's taken over. That's what's happened.
No.
We run out of time, unfortunately. I said that we could talk to you forever about it. I can't recommend the book, as I said, and we don't often recommend books here, but this one is one well worth getting, because, Rosemary, it's captured the history and it's captured the level of your achievement. And the one thing I feel is that you do yourself down too much, because it is an extraordinary history, and just a brilliant attitude to life that you have. People, please go and do look up anything that you can find on this woman when she was racing, and also look at that lovely YouTube video, that Formula 1, the Renault one. It's really lovely as well. We know there are other women involved. I know Nicola Drought obviously is a young endurance rally driver from Tipperary who's been doing very well. There's a motorbike rider, Nicole Lynch from Clondalkin, and she's actually the first Irish young woman who raced in the British in in the World Superbikes, I
yes.
think. Nikki Daly, the Irish hockey team, has been in with us, and she's involved in motorsport.
Yes.
She is, because her dad was, and she's also she's working together to get a Formula female team together. And actually, there was an all-female team competing in the Mondello 6-hour recently.
That's right.
Yeah. Emma Dempsey, Ruth Nugent, Anne Woods, and Nicole Watkins. So there are women out there doing it. We don't hear about it, so that's why we wanted to have you in as well, Patricia, because we don't hear about it.
The difficulty is unless they win now, because it is very competitive.
Yeah.
And, there's really no good going out and coming in last or second last or third last. I'm not saying any of those girls are doing that, please forgive me.
Yeah.
But, you need to be out there doing something. Either have a great big crash and roll like you did. So the it comes out.
Go home, go.
But I was hoping you might come out and do a rallycross next year.
No problem.
Would you?
No problem.
You and I will have our little ladies team.
Brilliant.
The little ladies.
That's a start.
And if you think I'm going to drive the imp against your Evo, forget it.
She wants to go in your Evo.
Yeah.
That's what she wants.
Might do that now next February or March.
Well, that's a great idea. There you go.
Would you come out and sit in?
I would love to. I would love to. I'm in. I'm all in. I'm all in. I'm not afraid of speed, so I'll do my
best. Take your Ed Mondello on a track day.
Brilliant. All right. Listen, guys. Thanks so much for coming in. As I said, particularly you're up to your eyes doing publicity. You're up to your eyes with Christmas trees and the real work, the paying work. So thanks so much for coming in. To our listeners, you can find all our previous episodes again on iTunes or on the podcast section of Off the Ball. Have a look in there, scroll down and find it. And also don't forget we have a Twitter account. It's at Off the Bench OTB, capital OTB. Thanks again, both of you. Really great. You've educated and entertained us.
Yes,
and we've learned a little bit about motorsport today. And until the next time, people, enjoy your sport and take care.
Thanks a million for watching. If you want to subscribe, well, there's the button right there. If you want to see more videos, hit that down there.